Good morning, welcome to Dirgayu. My name is Darshan, I'm from DASAR, and Dirgayu is a podcast where we invite healthcare professionals, business leaders, healthcare investors, and decode all things healthcare so that we can live a long life. We covered a little bit about what is the benefit of a 100-year life when we had a podcast with Amit Gandhi. He's the South Asia director at Philips India Healthcare. We did a lot of discussion around wellness and the purpose of living a long life. Today, I have an awesome guest with me, Pathik Divate. He is the CEO of Jehangir Clinical Development Centre. He is a chartered accountant and he is an MBA from Thunderbird School of Global Management. So welcome Pathik on Dirgayu.
Thank you, Darshan. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you for inviting me on this podcast.
Brilliant. So what we're going to do in this today is, we're going to decode a few things, which is how do healthcare startups, how can they work with various hospitals? How is it that people can understand what really clinical research means? And in a very simple manner, if someone is looking to break into the healthcare industry, what can they do today? All right. So to get started, I'm very curious, Pathik. You're a chartered accountant. You worked at Pfizer as a financial auditor as well. And now, for the last 15 years, you've been the CEO of Jehangir Clinical Development Centre, where some cutting-edge clinical research is being done out of Pune. So, how did this transition happen?
So actually, this was not the plan, the original plan. I don't come from an entrepreneurial background. My parents are both doctors, and after I completed my CA, I was working with Deloitte for a few years and then applied for an MBA. The plan was to do an MBA in the US, get a job, and live happily ever after. But that's where the turning point came actually. Before I left for the US, I met the chairman of Jehangir Hospital, Mr. Jehangir. And actually, the meeting was arranged by my mother. She's a senior physician at Jehangir Hospital, and she started a research institute at Jehangir. So she recognized that there is an opportunity for clinical research services, but she, being a doctor, didn't have that business, skills. And she arranged the meeting, and that was really something. Meeting the chairman of Jehangir Hospital, and he told me at that time that this looks like a good opportunity. And of course, I had done some research before the meeting, and he told me that this looks like an opportunity. Let's do this. So I told him that I'm going to do my MBA, and so he said I'm willing to wait.
Wow.
But just keep your word. Come back and start this. So I actually, focused my entire MBA with this business plan in mind. I wrote the business plan at MBA school. I networked with a lot of pharmaceutical people there, and then actually did a job at Pfizer to gain some experience. And then in 2006 came back and started JCDC. So it's been an amazing journey. Obviously, like every other entrepreneur, there's been lots of ups and downs, but overall a fantastic journey. And we've done over 350 projects now in the last 15 years. And we were also part of the Covishield study, which was the first vaccine that came out for COVID. So some amazing times we've had.
Wow, there's an interesting stat about chartered accountants. Some of the most successful businesses in the world have actually been started by chartered accountants. And so for me, it's not necessarily very surprising that you're able to succeed as the CEO trying to start a venture in a domain where you may not have the domain expertise, but you gained it over, say, 4, 5, 6 year period. Now, for those people who don't know about Clinical Research Development Center, can you just do a quick overview of what it does? And when you're saying 350 projects, what are these projects about? And how does it kind of really translate to better health, if I may ask that?
So we are primarily involved in everything that happens before a new drug or a device or a product comes out in the market, we do all the research to give confidence to the world and to the regulators, of course, that these products are safe and effective. So we have our own drug discovery labs. We have a clinical research facility where we do clinical trials, and we not only work with Jehangir Hospital but hospitals across the country. We manage all the data that comes out of it and clean the data and put it all together in a report, which then is presented to the regulators. And depending on how, whether you're a medical device or you're an actual drug, it depends, what goes in, and then if everything goes well, then the regulator approves that drug and the product comes into the market.
It's just amazing, it's so many different skill sets, mindsets, and domain functional expertise that is required that you've just done. And we'll get into that. But at the other hand, I also want to talk to you about healthcare startups. Pune has one of the highest number of healthcare startups. It's one of the best places to start a healthcare startup out of India. We are seeing a whole range of, whether it's devices, whether it's software, innovations that are coming out within the healthcare space. So my question to you is, when you have a founder who does not belong to the domain, similar to you, but wants to really effect change and has started a healthcare startup, and I've seen a few of them do this. A, what is your viewpoint on this? And two, especially when these startups want to then engage with a hospital, say such as Jehangir, what is required for them to successfully go through that process,
Right.
and then become a part of hospitals, care? Would love to hear that.
So I think it's quite important to have, a fresh perspective, and that's why a non-healthcare founder actually helps. A subject matter expert or a domain expert may not have business skills or vice versa. And in any case, it's better to separate out these roles. So I think it helped in our case, and I've seen this, that it's better to have a multidisciplinary team. And as the team grows, then you can add functions and add leaders, a marketing leader, a finance leader, etc. So coming to your question about what it takes for a startup to enter a hospital, it's a difficult challenge. Basically, it's important to understand the psyche of the administrators of the hospital, doctors, etc. And you have to convince them that your product is faster, better, cheaper, simpler, better than the existing products in the market. The first breakthrough obviously is the most difficult, and then once you have a story, then you can go out and talk about it. If you have a completely innovative new product, then it's even more difficult to gain the trust, because they don't know that this product exists. So there again, you have to have a lot of data which says that there is a comparison between a predicate or an existing product, and your product is superior to this product. So there has to be data to back that.
So just to break that down a little further, right? Say I'm a healthcare startup and I have a better process which will increase efficiency, effectiveness, save money, whatever it might be. So who should I approach? What should the pitch be? Or even to the point where maybe some examples that you could use, saying, this was the healthcare startup and this is where they were and this is how they successfully engaged.
Right.
Or even failure,
Right.
right? Because failure is part of it, and it is important for us to talk about failure as well, right? And there's nothing wrong with it,
Of course. Yeah.
So would love to hear some examples from you.
So at JCDC, we also engage with a lot of startups, and this is a separate kind of vertical where we work as a bio accelerator, because we realize that it's not an easy journey to be a biotech startup, especially. And we have the infrastructure so that an entrepreneur does not need to replicate it. We have the labs, we have the clinical research facility, we have a CRO, ethics committee, and we also have a hospital, a sister concern. So, if the product is really good, we help them through a soft launch through Jehangir Hospital, and then they have a story to tell. I think to give you an example, we did this with a brilliant German engineer. He came up with a product for carpal tunnel syndrome. And a lot of IT folks actually suffer from this because they use their hands a lot. And musicians or people who use their hands a lot, sportsmen, suffer from this. It's quite a bad condition where you constantly have paresthesia, tingling in your hands and pain, and you can't sleep so well. So in severe cases, the only option is actually surgery. So this engineer came up with a beautiful product which actually stretches the carpal tunnel band and gives relief over a period of time. So being an engineer, he didn't have the wherewithal. He came to us. We helped him with everything. We did a study which got published in an international journal, and we also helped him set up manufacturing in India. He didn't want to go to China, so we helped him with that. We also helped him with distribution, and that product is off the ground. So I think this is an example. We do that with startups, not only in terms of infrastructure, but also mentoring. We bring together funds to fund them and things like that. So
brilliant. I was head of operations of GeoGen Next, which is the startup initiative of Reliance Industries.
Right.
And the mandate over there was to identify great tech startups across different domains, which could potentially add value to any of the offerings that were there within Reliance business units, which is practically everything, right? And that's great, because if you're a startup, if you're starting off, imagine having one of Reliance's teams working with you to really scale it up, right? But you have to be that good. You have to be that technologically good. You have to be good in terms of your offering and your deliverable, right? Execution capability. So good to hear that within Pune, any healthcare startup that we have over here, you can reach out to Dr. Viraj Vaidya from Startup Socials, or you can reach out to the bio accelerator at JCDC to see if it makes sense, right? I think if not, you'll get some great feedback which will go into your longer term vision, right? I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about regulations, right? Being in the healthcare industry, regulations are very important, right? Because it affects their lives, their health, and they say, right, health is wealth, right, at the end of the day. And so that's where the part that JCDC plays is very, very crucial. But that also means working with regulators in a very positive way, so that you can bring change, but not such a change that can harm people.
Absolutely.
Right? So it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
So based on, you've worked with a lot of startups in this healthcare space and who try to bring their innovations to life.
Right.
I want to understand from a regulatory standpoint, what do these startups need to do so that they can actually, easily transition, and hospitals can then use it, or any other frontline worker could actually use it.
Sure. So just to set the context, obviously, like you said, healthcare startups, unlike a technology startup, are way more complex, and because of that, because we are dealing with human lives, it's highly regulated, and you have to prove that your product is first of all safe, and then effective to be used. So to talk about regulations, if you take a medical device, for example, there is a classification of medical device depending on the risk involved. So from class A, B, C, D, basically, and depending on your classification, you would need to do studies and generate data about the safety and efficacy of your device. So that is one. You also need to have a certification of your manufacturing setup, that it is standardized, GMP it's called. So as the complexity increases, the amount of submissions to the regulatory authorities would get more complex. Even if you have a simple app, just an app on a mobile phone, it can be classified as a software as a medical device, SAMD. So, for example, in the pandemic, there were a lot of cases of mental health issues, and there were startups that came up with apps for such patients. That might be also classified as a SAMD because you are in some way claiming to improve the condition of the patient. So there also there may be some regulations involved, simpler registration process. But and as you get more complex, so suppose you're a biotech company with a biological or a chemical entity which goes inside the body, the research may take anywhere between 4 years to 15 years, to come onto the market. And, you have to do in vitro lab studies, toxicology studies, clinical trials. Even after approval, there's something called post-approval studies. So it's way, way more complex. So healthcare industry is a typical, risk versus reward kind of situation. It's not for everyone.
For sure. But on the other hand, I've been part of, I've seen a few really good healthcare startups come from venture center.
Yes.
I don't know if you're working with them, but locally within Pune, that's one area where you have a good ecosystem being created to support healthcare startups to be able to deal with finances, with the domain, with the regulations, right? So getting the right intervention points. So you mentioned about healthcare devices, right? Today we are in 2022, and I don't see a single massive device, a device which has massive scale across the world, where it has started over here and then spread across the world, being the de facto device being used, right? So, what is missing in the Indian startup ecosystem, and what will it take for a healthcare device in India, created in India, made in India, to really dominate the world?
So, you're right actually. If you look at the 100 odd unicorns in India, only 3 are healthcare.
Yes.
So, and 2 of those 3 are aggregators, they are PharmEasy and CureFit. I think it comes down to the patients and the risk appetite. So both investors and founders, the first choice is not healthcare because it's a slow burn process. It takes a much longer time, and that's why I said risk appetite. So the investor community doesn't have that patience, and so there's not enough funding supporting it. I would say medical devices is somewhere like the auto industry in the 1970s. There's not much funding, and venture center is an absolutely amazing kind of platform to get it off the ground, POC, and then a little bit further, and then we come in as an accelerator.
Right.
I would say if you look at medical device industry, 85% is imported from imports, and it's a $45 billion industry.
Yeah.
So that's a huge opportunity for Make in India in itself, I would say. So it's okay to be a Me Too, but if we get a better product locally made, why not? So I would say that's a big opportunity itself. The other thing I would like to mention, you talked about how can we succeed. I believe that the fortune is at the bottom of the pyramid. And there is a huge disconnect between urban and rural India. And the kind of infrastructure and resources that are there in Tier 1, Tier 2 rural areas is really not up to that mark. So there are literally hundreds of problems to be solved. And if you can come up with a good low cost innovation that can really solve a problem across India. Typical example would be Band-Aid. It's available in every nook and corner. It's a small unit size. There are several such problems that can be solved.
Maybe a few of them, if you can suggest, if you don't mind.
Sure. So right now, especially in the pandemic, you've seen a lot of movement in the area of home healthcare and remote care, basically. So home healthcare, you can save up to 25-30% of your costs. You don't hospital infrastructure is not required; it can be done at home. So telemedicine showed a really good traction in the pandemic. And with that, there was a lot of enabled technology. So, for example, you had wearables, you had IoMT, what it's called, Internet of Medical Things, connected devices which remotely monitored the patient. That's a big area which is growing now. The other things which are growing is wellness centers are coming up a lot, and especially the traditional your Ayurveda and other such centers are growing in a big way. Yeah.
So, thanks for sharing that. One of the things that you mentioned is innovation in India, right? And traditionally, what we've seen in India is a lot of business model innovation,
Right.
which is good. Yeah, right? I think we need any and all sorts of innovation, right? Shri Dr. Mashilkar has been driving the innovation initiatives across different parts of India through different organizations. And India has gone from above 100 rank in the global innovation index. I think we've just come below 50.
Yes.
But innovation is also a function of deep research,
Right.
and deep research is a function of funds, right? And but funds is really a function of commitment. Are we committed to doing some research in India?
Right.
Today, when I read most of the books, and I love reading books, right? Most of the books in terms of thought leadership, white papers, or even that we see, right, the money being put in.
Right.
We hear from data from US citizens'
Right.
point of view.
Right.
But a US citizen born and bred and brought up in the Northern American hemisphere,
Right.
eating different foods,
Right.
having a different culture, is going to be different from an Indian, right?
Absolutely.
Eating dal roti. So, any thoughts on what kind of innovation is being done, research, ground level research being done in India that you can shed some light on?
Sure. So there has been a lot of innovation in India, and primarily because the government also has stepped in a big way in healthcare. They realize that private industries, VCs, Ps are not funding startups, and there was a gap there. So, for example, they set up the BioNest initiative, which has a lot of bio incubators that are venture center being one of them.
Correct.
They also did a lot of work in terms of liberalizing. So there's 100% FDI now allowed for hospitals for medical devices. In terms of innovation, India has done well in the AI/ML area for healthcare, which was a laggard. I think that they've done really well. I recently looked. I heard an interview of a brilliant company actually, and I think you should call him for your podcast.
Who is this?
This is the company called Dozy.
Okay.
And the name of the entrepreneur is Mudit. Yeah. So he has made a device which you can make a step down ICU at home. There is a device that goes under the mattress. It's contactless. It does not touch the body, but through the vibrations, it sends several data and information to a smartphone, say a relative staying, elsewhere, and an elderly patient can be monitored at home. They are really doing great. The other thing which I found brilliant was this entrepreneur is a brave heart. He actually saved his pet dog from a crocodile attack.
Okay.
And he lost his arm in the process. And he then built a bionic arm to himself. He's an IIT grad. I think you should just call him.
Absolutely.
So this is an example of a fantastic innovation. But in general, during COVID also, there have been amazing innovations. There's one Bangalore-based company which I read about, which has implemented robots to do screening of COVID patients and then disinfecting the area. There have been a lot of breath analyzers for screening of cancer patients. There have been biodegradable implants that can be put in the body. So I've seen a lot of good innovations, and that primarily because of the government push.
That is so good to hear. I'll definitely look up Mudit and see if we can get him. But the other one you mentioned about AIML, and there's a local startup called Deep Tech in Pune.
Yes.
And Dr. Amit, we're going to have him on our podcast soon.
Yeah.
So that should be an interesting conversation, which is in the radiology space.
Yeah.
Right, using machine learning to do a big part in terms of identification. Right, so that's lovely to hear that there's a lot of ground level innovation going in, and the government pushing quite a bit, right? So Pathik, I want to now talk a little bit about the healthcare sector itself.
Yeah.
Can you break down the healthcare sector, the value chain of it, and also share your thoughts around what are some of the changing trends? Because COVID was such a game changer, right? It has kind of changed the world, the healthcare industry upside down, in a positive way,
Right.
And so maybe a few thoughts around what is the value chain as you see it,
Right.
And second, what are the trends in the healthcare sector in India?
Right. So, to break down the value chain, basically the two main pillars of the healthcare industry is your traditional hospitals, healthcare providers, diagnostics. That's the first big one, and the second big one is the pharma, biotech, medical device, pillar. So these are the would cover the majority of the healthcare sector, and then the affiliated sectors would be like medical equipment for these two big ones. And then there's the insurance, there's clinical research, and then the new ones like medical tourism, home healthcare, remote healthcare, etc. So these are the big blocks of healthcare. Talking about the trends, so one big thing is definitely we see that the government of India taking healthcare more seriously. They've allocated more funds to healthcare, and we've seen that during COVID, but they're still committed to it. I talked a little bit also about their push for startups, but the NDHM, which is the National Digital Health Mission, is could be a potential game changer. And if it is implemented rigorously, it could unlock tremendous value, is what we feel. In the private sector, I talked about remote healthcare coming up as a big one. But now we also see a lot of technology, implemented quite well. So, for example, robotic surgery is now becoming quite a norm. We also see basically more power coming back into the hands of the patients. There has been a little bit of a credibility issue with the with the healthcare space. And startups are trying to give that power back to the hands of the patient, where you have aggregators, whether it is through pharmacy or nutrition, dietitians, healthcare professionals, or even information HubSpots, where patients can make an informed decision, take a better choice. So these are the big trends I see.
Very nice. If you don't mind me sharing, a little bit more about the National Digital Health Mission, right? UPI changed the game.
Right.
Today in India, we are miles ahead of any country in the West or otherwise. Right? Today in India, you come in and you can just use your phone. You don't need to carry cash. You don't need to carry a wallet, a credit card. You have your phone, and through that you can do financial transactions seamlessly. And there is huge credibility built in, right? Now, are we talking about something similar?
Yes.
And if so, what does that mean? Right? What will we see?
Right. So that is the overall vision, even for healthcare. If you are an elderly patient, you would have 3 or 4 files, of all your health records. Generally patients can't remember everything. This is going to be like a digital health record for each patient, and that is going to be of immense value in terms of even for coming up with better research. There's something called real world data, which is coming up in a big way, and we are also involved in real world data, where even the pharma biotech community is more interested in seeing real world data rather than clinical research which is conducted in a very sanitized way. They would like to see real world data. So as I said, it could be a game changer, but the intricacies are still in the works, and let's see how it is implemented.
No, see, it's a complex project.
Yes.
Right? We're trying to create an infrastructure layer, 1.3 billion people. Right? So that's massive. An interesting part, and I don't know how much you are familiar with augmented reality, virtual reality,
Yes.
and mixed reality.
Right.
But are you seeing the effect, because that space, these technologies, especially with the push of Meta now,
Right.
and everyone's trying to redefine what metaverse is, right? So, do you see the use of this technology being implemented in the healthcare space?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, for example, especially for the upliftment or I would say training and learning and development of healthcare professionals, virtual reality, augmented reality could be a huge boost. Where rather than a senior person explaining everything, you can actually have these technologies help healthcare professional get up to speed. So this is just one application. I don't understand it as much as you, but there could be several applications.
Yeah, so the whole AR, VR, MR is doing a good job in industrial training,
Right.
Especially think about manufacturing units where it is considered hazardous or dangerous, and then this technology is useful for training the people from safety standpoint, right, and maintenance standpoint as well. And it's doing a really good job at it in learning and development, like you said, training, upskilling.
Sorry, not development.
So now I want to get to the last part of this podcast, and this has been such a wonderful podcast. At DASAR, my focus is that to live a successful, meaningful, and an inspired life, you need to focus on three things.
Right.
One is your calling, right? If a person is engaged,
Right.
in terms of knowing what I want to do,
Right.
you focusing on building from the ground up JCDC, and it has taken you 10-15 years, right? It takes time, it is hard, it is complex.
Yeah.
And many times it doesn't work, right? But the fact that you are engaged in this mission is very meaningful.
Yeah.
Right? So having that meaning is one pillar.
Right.
The second pillar is managing your money.
Right.
Financial independence, financial freedom is important, because then you can do the things that are most meaningful to you.
Right.
And not take up jobs which you need to switch every year to 2 years.
Right.
And then the third part of it is fitness,
Right.
mental and physical fitness,
Right.
which includes, just so that you can manage your energy.
Right.
Nobody is asking you to build a six-pack ab or go run, create a world record, right? The idea is that we have enough energy so we can do good, meaningful work with full focus.
Right.
So, coming to you, how do you manage your fitness? What are your routines due to which you are such a peak performer?
I don't know about peak performer, but one thing which I have realized has made a huge difference is immersing yourself in something other than your routine. So, be it a hobby, a sport, not TV, but something which is different. So, I have a hobby, I sing. Okay. And I've been learning classical music for the last 4-5 years. Actually, the inspiration came from my wife, who is also a classical singer. And so it's great to immerse yourself in that. It's kind of a meditation in itself. And we also have a group. We perform and do small things. So I think that helps to take you away from just the stress of work on a day-to-day basis. So that's one thing. The second thing, and it's quite cliched actually, I have something called a golden hour or a golden hour and a half, where before everybody wakes up, I have my own routine of some amount of exercise, some meditation, Surya Namaskar, and engaging my hobby. I do some journaling, but some time away from the humdrum of day-to-day life, and I think that helps a lot. So, in terms of fitness, I would say that again, I'm not a big gym or a fitness freak, but but I understand the importance of fitness, so I would do a walk or a run or yoga, something on a daily basis, just to keep fit. And the other thing I find is very important is diet, which majority of the times eating home cooked food, eating at the right times, and we finish our dinner before 7:38. So there's a good time before you actually sleep, and I think that makes a huge difference in maintaining the weight. Of course, I've been blessed with good genes, so there's no obesity in the family, so that's nothing I can do about. But these things help. The last thing I would like to mention is having a positive frame of mind. And I believe there's nothing worth stressing about too much unless it's a life threatening situation. If you are calm and cool, and even stressful situations can be handled. So there's no point in worrying about things. That's easier said than done.
Correct.
But having a positive frame of mind is important.
Yeah, and just letting things go. Let's let time show what is got to show. But I thought, I'm going to highlight 3 or 4 things that you said, which were very interesting to me in your golden 1.5 hour. You said you do some basic fitness.
Yes.
And so, one of the things that I've been saying is do only 3 workouts a week.
Yeah.
Do home workouts, body weight workouts.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be fancy. The remaining days do like a 30-minute walk, right? Enjoy nature, right? Wherever you are in the world, right? The second part you mentioned was meditation,
Right.
and meditation is so powerful.
Right.
I'll share something with you. We launched at DASAR a 7-day meditation course
Right.
for beginners who were not able to even meditate for 5 to 10 minutes, right? And it's been selling like hotcakes.
Wow.
And who are the people who are buying it? Between the age group 35 to 45, 48, right? And it is simply they're just buying it and repeating it to the point where they're now saying, I don't want to buy every week. Can you just give me like a 3 months same thing,
Right.
which I can just do,
Right.
And so that seems to be playing a big part, definitely. But I think the biggest one is journaling.
Yeah.
And it is said time and time again that if you journal your thoughts, feelings, day, whatever it may be, that itself is so much reflection that you gain clarity, and it reduces anxiety, depression,
Absolutely.
and so many other problems which otherwise are bottled up.
Absolutely.
So thanks for sharing those. This has been an awesome podcast. If you are a healthcare startup, you know who to talk to, right? We are here. Our focus at Dirgayu is to bring awareness, and who better to bring awareness than people such as Pathik, who have been in this space making change happen, right? And I think there's a lot to learn for us, but learning is one part of it. The real learning is when you start doing. And so if you are interested in building a healthcare startup, you're already building one, you're interested in working in this, creating or changing your professional career from any other domain to healthcare domain. We've already seen Pathik himself saying that if he's a CA and he can enter this, there's no other reason why anyone else can't, right? It's a matter of interest and commitment. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Thanks a lot for coming on this podcast. If any of you want us to invite any other people on this podcast, you can put a comment or you can reach out to me at dd@dasar.in. Lastly, please share this. I think we need more people to listen to this and benefit from this. And you'll find a subscribe button. Please hit that subscribe button. Thanks a lot.